Hello, everyone. Welcome to eLearnChat, where it's all about learning. My name is Rick Zanani, and I'm joined today by Ajay Pangarkar. This is, I think, visit 2,420 over the last 2 years. I'm not sure. I lose track.
No,
but
it's more
he's
like
been on.
7,642.
642. I'm sorry, I exaggerated. Anyway, he's a stalwart on the show now. He's kind of an honorary co-host at this point, and he may wind up just taking it over. We don't know yet. But anyway, how you doing, Ajay?
I'm doing fine. Thank you very much, Rick. It's great to be back. And yes, the takeover has begun. So watch out.
Yeah, actually, and you'll find out why the takeover has become, because today, well, before that, we've got Harold. Harold Muliati is our video producer. He's doing the switching today. And also, back for her second appearance, not in a row, but almost close to being in a row. And we couldn't even get her on the show for years. But now she got the bug.
You hear in the background, eh?
I can hear her in the background. Yeah. And the reason we say his takeover is almost complete is because it is Ajay's wife, or I should say Terry's husband. It's Teresa Kirkwood, who is back with us. And here we go. This show is sponsored by Relay Corporation. Visit us at www.relaycasts.net. Thanks. And we are back, and in that center position of power, it's not Ajay this time. This is the only part he probably didn't like about today's show. He's not in that position of power he's usually in. But today we've got Terry Kirkwood in that position of power again. And welcome back, Terry.
Thank you for having me, Rick.
Oh, it was
Glad
fun.
to be back.
It was fun.
And I enjoyed it. Yeah.
And practice makes
try it again.
Yeah, practice makes perfect. And by this time you'll be an experienced pro. You won't get nervous anymore. No more headaches, migraines, or anything else.
No more drinking problems now.
Now we have an interesting topic today. We were going to talk about e-learning instructional designers. Are you really an instructional designer or an instructional assembler? Interesting topic.
Yep.
Ajay, what do you consider the difference between a designer and an assembler?
Well, actually, this topic, and I got to give credit where credit is due, because Terry and I were talking about it earlier about what we're going to chat about with you. And we said, well, we're experiencing this issue with a few people, especially what they call instructional designers, where they put a course together, but it's not really a course, but they think it's a course. And my opinion is this: just because you know how to use a software doesn't make you an instructional designer. So I don't know, Terry, if you want to add something to that. I think you know what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, I think we're starting to see this, I don't know if you want to call it a trend or maybe new way of doing things, but we're starting to see a lot of people using these softwares like, I'm going to say Rise. They just put up a title, grab a YouTube video, throw it up there and say it's an e-learning course. And I think it's going to be somewhere down the line. I think it's going to cause a lot of trouble with learners and e-learning designers who are, I don't know, like just doing the fast route. Like we used to look at micro learning. I think this is kind of. I'm thinking it's more like junk learning at this point.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Well, it is
throwing
because
it out there and hoping something sticks.
I've had this conversation with a lot of people. This is the common approach. I call it mediocrity 101. It is a very mediocre approach.
Yeah. And
nobody's testing the knowledge of the people afterwards. I mean, really testing. Is their performance improving? Are we, you go ask an e-learning person, well, what are you actually doing? What are your what are you trying to meet? What are you trying to test for? Yeah. And they don't know. A lot of them don't really know. They don't understand the business behind why they're training people. And that's one of the biggest problems.
Yeah, I think they've dropped that. I think they forgot all about the testing, and it's just get these courses, so-called courses, out there as fast as possible, get the numbers up, get the people to view these courses
Yeah.
and forget all about the learning component altogether. I
Yeah.
don't know if,
And ultimately performance. So
yeah,
KPI, you talk about key performance indicators.
Yeah.
You usually get this kind of,
yeah, yeah,
I believe me, I've had that conversation more than once, dozens of
we've been
times.
there. We've been there too, Rick. So
And this is with management. They
yeah,
have no idea. Yeah, and
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a shame. It doesn't have to be that way. But that trickles down. I have heard managers tell their people in e-learning departments, let's say, or technology, T&D departments, you don't need to learn the business at all. Just create the training.
that's interesting you bring it up, because the problem is, so L&D people are subject experts, right? We hire them because apparently they're supposed to be able to build courses that deliver on knowledge that people need. And granted, that's a very valuable resource. But to your point, Rick, nowadays the softwares are becoming so easy to use, which is a good thing. But I get people that I know around me, that I don't want to admit I know, that
right.
actually are putting, like Terry says, they get a software like Rise or Storyline 360 or whatever,
Yeah.
Captivate, and they pick a course and they say, well, we need a course on X. And then they go searching YouTube, bring a YouTube video in, or put some bullet point, take somebody's PowerPoint and just slap it on there and say, hey, I built a course. And it's like,
Right.
really? Did you build a course? Or did you
Yeah.
just do something just plain invaluable to the organization?
Yeah.
And then you wonder why you get laid off and your budget is cut. Like, seriously?
I don't know. Have we become lazy at learning? And we're just trying to, like I said, just trying to fill these holes because we've got pressure from our bosses, having to deliver all this, I'm going to keep calling it e-learning, but all this learning, these learning products or courses out there. And the pressure is on the designers to get this done, and they're crossing into the development part because these, like Ajay said, these softwares are so easy to learn. So they're just getting them out there, and they're not really focused on the learning component. It's the delivery of the product that they're trying to get out, and they're failing. They're just failing, and the stuff is just crap. It's garbage out there. And I'm just wondering, is this going to continue, or is it going to set us back as an industry of what kind of content we're actually putting out there?
Well, my theory is it'll continue until somebody really takes a look at it. Somebody in management says, why do I have 10 people in my development team all developing courses that nobody's actually improving performance on?
Right.
Then the question beckons an answer. You get somebody up high enough, a COO, a chief operations officer, finance officer, manufacturing, production, whatever person on top who's looking at performance and how to make things better, a little more efficient, especially wait till the finance guys really get into this. Why do we have $1 million budget for 10 or 20 people who aren't producing anything that the company's benefiting from? Then you have to start asking, the tough questions. And that's, usually when the layoffs happen and everything else. It's a temptation to create software in simple tools that can do very little. It's so tempting. It's micro learning. Okay, and so that's exactly what it is. What is micro learning? It could also mean little learning. You're not getting a lot of learning. You can look at it semantically in more than one way.
Well, we know how hard and how long it takes to put a really good course together. Companies don't want that amount of time, right? And they don't want to spend the dollars anymore. So I guess to keep their jobs, they've maybe found a way around it to get something out there. But again, it comes back to meeting the company's needs, their objectives, their learning objectives, all of it. And they're just not doing it.
But, it does a disservice to the actual instructional designers who spend a lot of time learning and mastering the skill, to get somebody who decides that, hey, I can use Articulate Storyline, and I learned it in a couple of days, or I took a week-long course with Articulate. Now I know how to make a course. So now it does a disservice to the people who actually know what they're doing. And I'm talking about some of the instructional designers we know that are really good at what they do. And it really takes a shine off it. You know what I'm saying, Rick? It just takes, if I were an instructional designer and had Bob or Mary come up and say, yeah, I can build a course and this is what I do and I can do it within a day, where the real instructional designer is saying, no, to get real learning that actually delivers on performance, we need to take, a week or 2 weeks to build this course.
Right. We have to spend the money. Yeah.
Yeah. And as Terry says, maybe the leaders are saying, maybe there's so much pressure that the leaders are saying, well, why would it take 2 weeks when this person can do it in a day? Well, you can do it in a day and it doesn't work.
Now, here's another thing, and people in the learning community are probably slowly becoming aware of this. And that is a lot of not only learning managers, but other managers are saying, well, hey, we need to get some instructional designers. Hey, customer service guy, customer service gal, come on, you guys are now instructional designers. And that's what they're calling them. They're taking people out of customer service, out of other frontline kind of areas and saying, you've now been promoted to an instructional designer. Let's build something. And they give them Rise or they give them Storyline or something else or PowerPoint. And they're calling them. We have 4 instructional designers on staff now. No training. Some of them may have degrees, some may not. Some have degrees in totally different things. And you just think, wow. So, and they're not paying what an instructional designer makes either. They're paying them more than they made as a customer service rep, but they're not getting paid the real amount of a corporate instructional designer where they're making quite a bit. So I think they're cutting costs, making it up that these people are qualified IDs, and the training coming out of it is, for the most part, unverified, untested. In the long run, it would fail.
Yeah, and it's going to scare away the learners, right? Because when, for the most part, back in the day, we were like flooding the market with all these PowerPoint presentations. We'd fancy it up, put it in these fancy softwares, and we were trying to get the buy-in for these learners to use these type of courses that we were delivering. Now we're throwing crap out there, and we're trying to keep them to continue learning. And now, at what point are we going to lose them completely?
Well, and what's interesting, that's a really good point, because the first people that are going to complain about it is not to your point, Rick, the leaders are going to eventually wake up and say, why am I spending my money on this? Yeah. But they're not the first people to complain about it. To Terry's point, it's actually the user who's actually enrolling in a course, so the employee, the frontline employee, who's under pressure to get a new skill and learn a new skill to do their job properly, that are saying, this is crap. And when you lose that buy-in, it's going to feed up the food chain very quickly. And when you lose them, you're screwed.
Yeah.
And it's hard enough to do what we do anyways. And it's taken us a long time to get these people to buy into online learning to begin with. And then if we start producing products like this and we lose them, how do we turn this around and get them back? How do we justify what we do and prove to them we have quality products to deliver? How do we do that?
And Terry, you made a good point earlier about YouTube. You can find a lot of tutorials on software, on processes, on a lot of things on YouTube. And you said a lot of people just find a good video and put it in there and go, there, look what I just created. Yeah. But the problem is you could do that. You can embed a video, but is that training? What happens when you have to make updates to the training? What happens if processes change? You may not always find that video. And it just makes it, and by the way, a lot of companies block YouTube, so you may not even be able to get to use that video.
Right.
So there's a lot of issues with that whole training, life cycle going on right now. I think the development part of the training is probably the easiest today because they're not putting much into it. The actual design part of the training is probably where it's suffering the most, because people who many times don't understand training at all are now creating training pieces, if you will, for people who need to be trained. And again, and of course, there's the other side that even when traditional IDs were doing training, they would write these incredibly long masterpieces that would take forever, which also didn't meet the company needs. So you have that kind of balancing act. You're not trying to write an encyclopedia. On the other hand, scientists have a problem with that. They like to impress people with their vocabulary. And while that's good and fine, if you're trying to teach someone, you can't impress people with your teaching knowledge. You need to teach. And
No.
so, these are just issues that are endemic to the industry a little bit, but the tools have gotten easier. But
Yeah, and by the way, Rick, that's a good thing, right? I mean, at the end of the day, the tools, we're not supposed to be working for the tools. The tools
No.
are supposed to be working for us, right? At the end of the day, that's
Yep.
what technology is supposed to do. I mean, we're all from that same generation where back, 30 years ago, we were learning COBOL and BASIC and Pascal and C++, whatever, and I learned all that stuff. I don't remember any of it, so don't even quiz me, but that was, it was like in the day when you worked with I did anyways. My dad would open the hood of the car and he'd actually, change the filters and the spark plugs and you had to do those kind of things. Today, you don't do that anymore, right? I barely open the hood of my car because I open it and I don't understand what's going on in there, but all I need to do is push a button now and the car starts.
Yep.
But that's technology making the technology working for us, in this case, the car. Right. So now the tools that we have, we don't need to program it anymore. Although our dear common friend here, and I'm going to give him a shout out, Anthony Altieri, and I'm a sort of in his boat, not to the extreme where good instructional designers should know how to program a little bit. But at the end of the day, the tool should work for you, but it's your subject matter expertise that's supposed to be developing the course and just like any other tool, facilitate that process, but not to be the answer to the process.
Right. Because you can have the best software out there, but if your content is crap, it's crap. No matter what you do, no matter how many audio, video interactions you put, if your content's bad, it's bad. And I've seen so many bad stuff out there. Mind you, I've seen some good stuff. So I'm not, saying this across the board for everybody, because there are some good stuff out there. But for the majority of the stuff that we've been seeing, it's not good, and they're not thinking, and they're not taking the time, and I think they're rushed, they're under pressure, and they just have to produce at the end of the day. And as long as they produce the content, they just have to get it out there, and they don't have time to think, and it takes weeks and months and sometimes a year to produce a really good course. And if you don't have that time and your deadlines are tight, this is what's happening with people. And it's a shame, but when do we step back and say what we've been doing isn't working?
Well, it goes back also to, I know we've talked about this on the show many times, that an enlightened company will train people because they understand the benefit of that. A lot of companies train only because they have to, not because they want to. So therefore, they begrudgingly put out the budgets. Yeah. Or the amount of time or effort necessary. Now, I know a lot of companies that do a ton of training, but they're not doing what they used to, and they're trying to make the training very shortcutted. So it's as quick and dirty as you can make it. Check off, okay, I did it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's funny, Rick, you mentioned that we've been, and maybe it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but we've been engaged by companies that are very progressive, that ideally they probably don't need us. And these companies, when the way they do training, some big names that we know that Terry and I have worked with, tend to invest more money in downtimes in developing the training skills. And when you see the outputted results, and that, to your point, Rick, again, it's the performance and the outcome that is the key. Right. So when you see, and I use generic examples here, when I look at a Toyota, I know I'm using big names, so please be patient with me, but they're very visible. When you look at a Toyota that talks about quality, and the reason they stand out in quality for the last 50 years is because it's not by accident. There's processes that are in line with that. There's a learning function that's in line with that. That's not an afterthought. That's fully integrated. We could talk about Starbucks. How do you get a barista anywhere in the world to make the coffee the same way over and over again, identical? Or McDonald's, when the burgers are, there's a little more mechanical. I like Starbucks because there's a little more variation possibilities in it. But, how do you get a barista to go in Paris to make a coffee, and like I go to New York and I get the same coffee, even if I customize it, it tastes 99% the same way. That shows how their learning function is supporting the business outcomes very well.
Right. There's a purpose to their training, right? There's some companies, it's all tied together. So they put the effort, they put the time, they put the money into it. And then there's some companies, like Rick was saying, that it's, down and dirty, that just hit those numbers and get it out there. So to your point, Ajay, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of companies who take their training seriously. It's part of how they become or stay successful or have that competitive edge over the other companies. Otherwise, it just falls apart.
Now
But I
you
want
did say
to.
something, Ajay, that was ghastly to me.
What's
How
that?
can anybody in Paris want a Starbucks in
That's
Paris? I
true.
mean,
That's a wrong choice.
it's
I could have been. I could have been worse, Rick. I could have said Italy.
I knew he was going to go with the Starbucks example. I knew he was going to do that.
Yeah, Starbucks in Italy. Yeah, nobody goes to Starbucks in Italy for God's sakes.
Nobody goes to Starbucks in Italy. No, no.
oh,
But no, let's go. I want to go back to a root discussion that we had here. I feel bad for the really qualified instructional designers who are being undermined by people who think, to your point, Rick, who are being put
yeah,
in a position because they can use the software and
yeah.
pluck these elements and build a course. This is unfair to the good
Hmm.
instructional designers. The example I gave you before we got on air was as a student in '85. I know I don't look that old, thank you. But in '85, when I was a student, I worked at General Motors, and I worked on the assembly line. And I worked on one function of the assembly line. It doesn't mean I can build a car.
No.
So people who pretend with the title of instructional designer, who've been put in there because they can work with software, it doesn't mean you can build a course. And you're doing a disservice to the people who actually can do that stuff very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, these one individuals are end up doing both jobs at the same time, right? Like there aren't, they're not large organizations. So sometimes that you've got that one person who is doing 4 or 5 different jobs, and they have to shortcut
True.
it because they don't have the time and they don't have the
That is true.
resources and they don't have the extra help. So it
Well,
does
also,
kind of
let,
sort of morph all
and
into one job.
let's take it even a step further back. A lot of times, the instructional area is not looking at the processes already in existence and saying,
Yeah.
how do we fine tune this? We had to do one project about 2.5 years ago, and then a second version of it last year. And in this project, they said it takes people somewhere between 3 and 6 months to get online and functional. And they asked us to take a look at that. I said, okay, we can do this in 2 to 3 weeks. And they're going, how? Well, here's the process. So we went back and really deconstructed the process. They had to do an exception kind of type data entry work that they had to do, back end to a banking operation. So this is stuff nobody sees. Oh, a letter comes in. Where does it go? It could go 1 to 10 different places. How do we codify that? How you codified it triggers 10 different processes. So it took forever for them to learn how to do that. And we said, how are they learning this? Well, they're going through classes and learning via PowerPoint and everything else. When do they touch it? Oh, maybe about 3 months in. That's your problem. They're not touching it. They're not.
Mhm.
So we rewrote the software, not the software, but the training. And by the time we were done, within 2 weeks, they were about 80-90% functional. 2 weeks, from
Wow.
3 months to 6 months. And
Yeah.
then after that, within a short time, those people who were learning were now training other people. We also added kind of a mentor side by side approach. Let the train, because they didn't have a lot of people they had to train, but they needed to be trained well. So the mentor would train them. They would do all the entry. The mentor would then just watch how they're doing it, go back, next person, next entry. So in the first several days, they've done dozens of entries. They're
Wow.
learning as they go rather
Hmm.
than
Yeah.
learning and not touching. How can you learn that way? You
Yeah.
don't.
You
And it
don't.
takes forever. And so that one got a lot of kudos because they went, well, but all it is simple analysis of a system. How do you
Hmm.
fix it? The actual creation of the course was easy. What about the analysis? Let's look at what we're doing, not repeat the same thing over and over and over again. And that's something that's a lot of times missing in also the development process or the e-learning process. Why are we doing this course in e-learning? And is it only e-learning? Could it be done differently? I mean,
Yeah.
in other words, we're not acting as consultants in the industry, as instructional designers,
Well, Rick,
yeah.
let me ask you this with the both of you actually. So, and I know I sort of know the answer, but I want to ask you your opinion. So, instructional designers are skilled in doing a needs assessment. Are we
Hmm.
not doing enough? Are they not doing enough of that and just reacting too quickly on building
Well,
courses
I'll tell you,
nowadays?
in 26 years of fully focused on e-learning development and training, we have done 2 assessments. 2. That's it.
Well, I think
Nobody wants.
they're
They
not,
don't want them. They don't care.
yeah, they don't want them. And at the same time, they're just not well done. People just don't know how to do them properly.
Right,
So the
that's
ones that
another
are
one.
doing them, they're not doing them well.
Oh,
So they're, again, ineffective, and they get dropped to the wayside because they don't know how to
Terry,
do them.
we had one client that they did an assessment for a large department within a financial company, and then they gave it to us and said, "Here you go, all our designs done." I thought somebody just pooped on an Excel spreadsheet. I mean, it was that bad. It was, one of them had 950 points of what they needed in that system. 950 out of order, no categorizing. Things like, we need longer lunches. Huh? I don't like our bathroom breaks. Huh? I mean, it was just garbage.
Yeah.
We threw it out. And in about 2 days, we had the analysis we needed. But it was that kind of garbage. And they considered that a working systems analysis. Oh, and it's scary. It's pretty scary.
Yeah.
When you see stuff like that, you realize, and then the managers above these people don't even know what's going on. Oh, that's really great what they did.
Yeah.
No, it's garbage. It's absolute garbage. And then they paid us to redo it anyway. It's like, well, this is dumb. But I'll tell you another thing, and this is kind of going par and par, hand in hand with the level of quote unquote IDs who aren't IDs. They have to justify their pay. They have to justify their job, so they make up stuff. And that's a shame. That's really a shame, because they don't do themselves a favor, and they don't do the industry or their company any favors.
No.
Oh my God, Rick, you just hit the painful, a little nerve for both of us.
I want to say that, not all instructional designers are terrible.
No, there's some very good
a lot
ones.
of good ones out there. So I'm looking forward to the emails on this about
Terry, we had one client. And at the end of the day, what the client wants is what the client wants. Fine. Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
I'll give you all the advice in the world, but at the end of the day, what's not great. But we have one ID person in there who is, I think, trying to make themselves, to your point, Rick, make themselves look worth the money they spent.
It was frustrating. It was just, we would push back and they'd push back, and we would try to explain why these things needed to be done this particular way and not that way. At the end of the day, it was, it's always a deal breaker with them. So
but don't forget,
we had no choice but to back off and give them what they want, because
the problem with this person is that they're probably really good as an instructional designer. The problem is that they've lost focus on the end result and the learning. And they're doing things that, in my personal opinion, Terry's personal opinion, a professional opinion, I should say, is hampering the learning for the end user. Yeah. It's just made it worse. And it's like, really?
Actually, I would say the end result
we were talking about how they're losing, you're right, the focus is on the learner, and I don't think they think about them at all. I think it's just about putting, like you were saying, putting the course together, and at the end of the day, they're not thinking about the learner. They're not thinking about how they're learning, what they're learning, why they're learning. It's just, here's a course and let's see if it works.
Well, it's interesting. We had one of the managers years ago that we work with. I would tell him, I go, you've got 4 generations in this place. It's a big company, big financial institution, and they don't learn in the same way. He goes, too bad. He hated graphics. He hated video. He hated everything. And it's like, they're not going to read. Too bad. They really need to learn how to read.
Yeah.
It's not, so a lot of training was thrown out after the fact because it was useless. And and we're adding color combinations, color coding things. There's a psychological part of when you use certain colors, why you use colors, how that color, if you see it often enough, now you're relating to, okay, that makes sense. No, I want everything to be yellow. Why yellow? Just the yellow was the color. That was what Microsoft once said. I go, Microsoft? What the heck does Microsoft have to do with this? and this is what we went through. And it's like, it was sometimes painful.
No, I think that, at the end of the day, I think there's really some really good people who do good design, and they really do their work well. And I know a few of these people, and they take their role seriously, and they have an outlook. They're not isolated or siloed into the design of the course. They know what the outcome is supposed to be and what it's supposed to impact. However, the problem is, to your point, Rick, is that when you're trying to prove your worth, I think that gets lost. Like in this person's case, I'm sure they qualified in their job. The problem is that I think they're making their case to their boss implicitly. That you're paying me a salary, you see this, I'm doing my job kind of attitude, and it really is getting lost in translation. And I'm not proud. And guess who gets the blame, Rick? Right at the end of the day, when the learning doesn't take place, the consultant, right? Like
that's right. Always.
It's like what it's like. You're on that end of the coin too. So.
But we also had the other thought: what if she's not trying to impress her boss and she's just bad at what she does?
That is another.
Well, maybe it's not in impressing her boss.
We will probably be getting hate mail and death threats after this, but never fear. Harold is a trained assassin. Nobody messes.
No, again, like I said, I mean, we, in this industry, we know a lot of people, and a lot of them are good. So, save for the emails, but we come across them, more often than not, and it also makes us what we do not enjoyable when we have to deal with this. Some days you're just, not enjoying what you do, even though you love the topic, you love the subject. Dealing with this kind of stuff on a daily basis, it kind of takes the wind out of what you do for a living.
And I think, for the most part, most IDs think that e-learning is either dead or dying. I've talked to my share of them because it hasn't met the promise of the future. It just hasn't done it. Over the last 20-something years, a lot of talk, but it hasn't really gotten there. And there's a lot of reasons for it. It's not just the IDs, not just the software. It's the company. It's a combination of a lot of things. And it's also the solutions that people are putting together don't always need e-learning. It could be done with other ways. And many times e-learning is used for the wrong reasons. And so that's another thing that goes on. Or sadly, the courses are too long. They're not broken up well. The LMSs suck. You name it, something can cause it to go badly.
What's interesting, Rick, is that, as you know, I teach and I help certify future CPAs. And the young ones that are coming out to become CPAs, I tell them, I said, you've been equipped with a lot of great tools, financial analysis tools, accounting tools, and stuff like that. I said, you got a great big toolbox here, but you can't keep taking out the same tools to hammer in the nail. I mean, there's a lot of tools there that are appropriate. And you and I know, I think Mark Lassoff, and I'm going to say his name 3 times and hopefully he'll pop up. But Mark Lassoff is a great guy, and I have to say that because he'll beat me up otherwise. I'm just kidding.
Right, you're going to get hate mail.
But Mark brought up a question on LinkedIn recently, which I totally agree with him. He said, should we stop with the terminology of e-learning and just speak about learning? Because at the end of the day, again, as you said, Rick, e-learning is just another tool in our toolbox.
Right.
What we're really trying to do is give learning. And e-learning is one of those tools. And even today, e-learning is so diversified, it means a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So,
No, I was going to say a lot of different things, but, we have to look at every age range of people, right? The younger ones, they're all into TikTok, so everything is very fast. Then you've got the mid-range, and then the seniors, of how they all learn. So, you're right. It's a complicated, it's a juggling act all the time, and we're always trying to balance it. And it's not easy. It's a really tough way of getting learning, because Ajay's right. E-learning, it's just one way of delivering a lot of different types of learning. Whether it's a classroom or, I don't know, what we do online, it's really difficult to hit all those targets all at once and please everybody all the time.
So, Rick, shameless plug. I hope you don't mind. As you know, we do a lot of courses for LinkedIn Learning, and we did one
Shameless
called
plug.
"Gaining Buy-in for Learning," and it speaks. And actually, and I agree. I don't want to be a shameless plug here. I understand. I want to promote the course, but what we speak about, and I've written. If people want to search for it, they can search for our names and find articles for free talking about this. But the 3 levels of buy-in, and like we talked about this, right? If you're an instructional designer, you're designing any type of courses. You need to, again, Rick, as you said, you did only these needs assessment twice, and it's like you need to do more of this, because you need to ask the right questions. You need to go to the people who are actually going to use the course. What do they want? How do they want to receive the learning? Because it's their jobs. I mean, we're from a generation, the 3 of us probably, that when we were sent to training, we thought it was a bit of a holiday, but today employees are such a time constraint and a lot of work that if they leave their desks even for a half a day, they get piles of work piled on them. Then that's all they're thinking about. So if you're not going to provide any value for them in the learning, they're not going to show up. So you figure a way how to get their buy-in, then their bosses, and then of course their senior leaders. And you will really get a good buy-in if you understand those processes at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That's all we have to say about that.
That's all we have to say.
Rick, did I just like stump, like not stump you? Did I just like, Rick has always something to say.
I was listening. I was waiting for any comment or. No, it was good. I agree.
Yeah, it's like we all stopped talking at once and just were looking at the cameras. Yeah. We're all being extra polite.
Is that the music I hear, Rick?
That music in the background. So what time is it? It says we are out of time.
Oh, really?
It goes fast.
It does.
See, Terry, we believe in torturing people, but slowly. Or quickly, actually. So it's done. It wasn't too bad, right?
We're done? No.
But no, you know what? We're touching on a lot of subjects that a lot of people don't like to talk about. But it's part of the industry and part of the reality we're all faced with and live with. And I really do believe we should really have a talk about this general, that mediocrity is the king or queen right now of everything. And it's not just e-learning, it's everywhere. Go to retail stores. How many good people work retail nowadays? Go anywhere. There's no manners of saying thank you for shopping with. Nothing. People aren't taught. They're not being educated. I've talked to some people in retail that said they have to go back to teach people basic manners to deal with customers. They have no clue whatsoever. So mediocrity reigns supreme, and that just means not a good thing for anybody else. And what does mediocrity hate more than anything else? Anybody they consider not mediocre because they're a threat. Just something.
Yeah, but you can also, there's an opportunity in this world of mediocrity to rise to the top and be better than most. And even though people be out to get you, you're doing the right thing and you're doing it well. So
that's why you need a Harold right here.
That's what exactly.
He's dangerous.
Hey, Harold.
He's practicing moves over there. Huh?
No, and one last thing I'd like to add, Rick. The industry talks about putting a label of professional on them. Yeah. And I caution that because that has a very serious implication. What I mean by that is that to be a professional, you can't take shortcuts. I'm a legal professional, and I am not allowed to take shortcuts. I have to do my investigation. I have to do my work properly, and I have to give the highest quality and work and integrity possible under my code of conduct. And I don't see that in the learning profession right now. And if you want to be called a professional, and some people are. Yeah, I know. Stop with the hate now. But
I agree with Ajay to a certain point. But sometimes in some of these jobs, I don't think they have much choice. And their boss is standing over there saying, just, perform, get it out, code of conduct. I don't know. I think it's just part of the job. They want to keep their jobs. They're doing the best they can with what they have. And I don't know.
What I love more than
I agree to disagree sometimes.
This is a whole other topic, but what I love most is companies that, especially large companies that don't spend that much on training, but if you look at their profits, they're in the tens, 20s, 30, 40 billion.
Yeah.
But they can't afford to buy new computers. They can't afford to buy an element. It's like,
They don't care about.
They don't care.
People.
They don't care because
they don't care about their employees.
It's a whole other issue.
Because anyway, we talk about. Sorry, are we out of time or?
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, we talk about these people as learners, but the reality is that they're actually the employees working in these companies to do their jobs to make these companies more money. And we do call them learners, but they are the employees that we're trying to make better.
That's
to give more to the company, and the companies are missing the boat on a lot of this stuff. So
from learner to burner.
Which again is another topic.
Yep. Well, anyway, thanks both of you for being here. This is, I think, it's the first. You're the first couple who've actually been on the show. I can't think of anybody else who's been on the show as a couple.
Couple award.
That's pretty good.
Rick? People like couple of what?
I think we need to have an eLearning couple award. I didn't say couple of what, did I?
I know you. I know you.
I have a good friend who's Jewish, and he always says, we're the chosen people, but nobody knows what we're chosen for. He's funny. He's really funny, actually, but he's got some good lines. But anyway, well, thanks again for coming on, and we look forward to seeing you again
Rick.
next time, either individually or combined. Always a pleasure. And for all you folks watching, please subscribe, give us feedback, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever. And I don't think you have thumbs up and down on LinkedIn, do they? Or do you? I don't know. On YouTube, I think you do. LinkedIn.
It's a like. I think it's a like. I think it's a like.
It's a like.
It's a like, yeah.
It's a like.
Yeah, give us a like, guys. Give us a like.
Yeah. So anyway, that's right. We're also on Facebook doing this, so it's a like or whatever.
Oh, and just before we close, I just noticed there was a comment by Robert Crago, one of our previous guests, and he said, management seems to want immediate solutions and don't have patience for needs analysis, probably because they don't understand what it really is.
No, and Robert worked in one of the toughest industries. He was in the food industry for a long time in like regional training and everything. From fast food to restaurants, it's a tough business, and you've got to get people up to speed quickly. And training is not only for cooking; it's for safety and everything else. There's a lot of things they have to be aware of. But yeah, Robert's a good guy. Hey, Robert. Anyway, well, again, thanks to you and thanks to you guys, and we will see you all next week. Ajay will be back next week as co-host. With Joe Ganchi, eLearning Joe. Here we go. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.